Hello friends, so today I wanted to discuss some kind of important stuff. This is in regards to the last video that I filmed, which I'll leave a link up here. I'm never sure which side it's going to pop up on because the camera flips things. Anyway, it's going to pop up here. If you haven't seen this video, I know it's going to pop up over here if I point this side. So if you haven't seen this video, go watch it first because none of this is really going to make a whole lot of sense. Some of it might, but within context of what we're talking about, it's not going to make a lot of sense unless you go watch that video. So we're going to be addressing some of the comments, questions, and concerns about my testing in this video from the last video. And some of this will relate to future videos as well, which is why I'm addressing this. I can simply point people back to this video and explain some of my testing methods and why I did or didn't test something. The last video I filmed was with this thing. This is a knife steel, a butcher steel, a kitchen chef's knife steel, etc. However you want to define this. This is what I call a non-abrasive honing rod. It is made from steel, has no abrasive qualities. It is just a simple steel that is designed to, well, we're getting into the definitions here, but it was originally designed to straighten the burr on the edge of the knife. And in the last video, I showed what exactly these things do with extreme close-ups under a microscope, and people had problems with the way that I use this and that I was wrong. And I want to address some of those. This is not addressing haters' comments. This is addressing real concerns that people had with the last video. Now first, I want to address something real quick, which is what you see on my YouTube videos. So you guys have to realize that I do a lot more than what you see on video. I have to cut a lot of stuff out so that we're not sitting down watching an 8-hour video of me using this thing and taking 1,000 pictures that you really can't tell any difference with. Realize that I have to whittle down like 8 hours worth of video footage into a 10 or 15 minute long video that is somewhat watchable. I just can't show everything. And one of those things in particular is the direction that this was being used. And we're going to come back to this in a second, I think. I had shown in the video me using it in the edge trailing or backwards direction, like this. A lot of people told me that that was the wrong direction. Now, I'll get to this in a minute, but the reason that I showed the knife being used edge trailing is because, as you saw in that video, I referenced a celebrity, Gordon Ramsay, who is very popular and shown a lot using one of these things. And the video that I referenced of him using this, that's exactly how he describes using this in the video, which is why I left that direction in the video. As the video I was referencing shows this thing being used in exactly that manner. That's not to say I didn't test it in the forwards direction. I did test it in the forward direction, and here's that video footage now. All right, so right there, I can actually feel that edge roll on the steel.
So this is the edge roll before. This was me testing the effectiveness of the knife steel to remove a true rolled edge in the forwards direction. And then here is afterwards. And you can see that it really didn't do very good things to the apex of the knife. And this is one of the burr removal tests.
Cuts paper, but it doesn't feel as smooth as it did when we first got it off the stone.
Okay, so as a reminder, here's what the burr looks like directly off of the stone. You can see how it is standing nice and straight for the most part. Now here is after using forward passes on the honing rod. And I hope what's coming across here, what's actually going on in this picture, and this is where sort of experience comes into play and why it's hard for me to convey this information via a picture on YouTube. But initially what we're looking at here is we are looking at the burr that has had parts of itself folded to one side and parts of itself folded to the other side. You can see areas like right here where the burr is folded towards the camera, and areas here where the burr is folded in the opposite direction. So we're not actually removing the burr here that we initially created. We are simply, I guess we are sort of cleaning it up somewhat, but we're also bending it in opposite directions as well. And this is the problem when using the honing rod in the forward direction. it doesn't really help minimize and reduce the burr like you should be initially. So I'm going to do this again. I go back, I sharpen the knife, and put a burr on the knife, take a picture of that burr, and that's what that looks like. Now I do a handful of alternating light passes on a 400 grit diamond stone. I actually spent less time on this diamond stone than I did on the knife steel itself to get this result. This right here is directly off of that 400 grit diamond stone using that alternating light pass technique. And you can see it is a much better, almost burr-free apex. Now I want to reiterate this, I spend less time using the 400 grit diamond stone than I did using the knife steel itself. I actually spent a couple of minutes going back and forth trying to minimize and reduce this burr to nothing, and what you saw was the best that I could achieve. Now that is comparing apples to apples. What if we move along and actually use a fine ceramic and a strop in order to completely minimize and reduce the burr to nothing? Again, we're spending the same exact amount of time here as we would with a honing steel. We are just using a little bit more skill and another piece of equipment, but it does not take any more time. And I actually had to slow this footage down artificially because I didn't even have enough time to talk about what I was doing while I was doing it. So time-wise, it's not even a comparison. And this is the 400 grit edge that has been deburred and stropped very quickly and cutting a paper towel. This is what that edge looks like up close and in comparison to the knife steeled edge. Now, should I have left this testing in the original video? I think the answer is pretty clear now. The answer is yes, but let me know your thoughts below.
So as you can see, we really didn't get any different results using it in the forward direction than we did using it in the backwards direction. The end result here at the end of all of these tests was exactly the same, no matter which direction or method that I used to test this. And that's why I cut that portion out of the video, because that was another 3 to 5 minute long segment that would have pushed the video over 20 minutes. And very few people are really interested in spending 20 minutes of their lives watching a video on knife honing steels. I actually addressed a lot of the concerns that people had in that video if they went back and actually watched the entire video. Some of these things were very brief, 30-second long things addressing these very issues. So if you had a problem with my testing methods, I advise you to go back and watch the entire video. And again, I'm only addressing the polite comments here. Obviously, there's trolls out there, but we're not addressing that. We're addressing polite comments from people who generally had a problem with my testing methods. Also, keep in mind that all I'm doing in that video is showing you what these things do. I'm literally showing you what they do under a microscope and clear up the confusion as to what they are actually doing. And I show that in the video, and yet somehow people still had problems with it. Another issue I wanted to address here, and I think this is a real concern, is that I was using a real high-end knife to test this thing. This is the exact knife that I used to test this. This is a $1 knife from the dollar store. I have a Rockwell tester behind me right there, and this Rockwell anywhere, if I remember correctly, from 51 to 53 HRC. 52.5, depending on where it's tested. And that's extremely common to have a 1 to 2 point hardness range like that for knife steels. One of the big issues that people brought up was that butchers or kitchen knives are usually made out of very soft steel, and the steel I was using was way too hard for this, and so on and so forth. It's not. This is about the softest knife that you can buy currently on the market. Now, another issue that I wanted to bring up is the definitions. When we're defining something, whether it's a burr or what is sharp, etc., the definition is the definition that we are currently talking about. Because when let's say we're referencing a burr, even among the experts, and this has been a subject of argument for quite some time, even amongst the experts, what exactly is a burr? It seems to me that nobody can really agree on what it is. There's no clear one definition on what a burr actually is and what it isn't. At what point does a knife edge become a burr, and at what point is the burr just a really thin apex? That in itself could be an entire video series. And I'm not going to get into that right now, but there's problem with how we're defining things. What I would consider sharp is not going to be what other people consider sharp. What other people consider sharp is not what I would consider being sharp. So a lot of that is relative to what you're used to. Yes, technically speaking, these things will straighten out a rolled burr, not a rolled edge, but a rolled burr, and make the knife temporarily sharper.
Like in this example right here we touched on earlier.
Now, is that sharp up to my standards of sharpness? No. And I've demonstrated this in another video, which I linked in the last video, which I'll also link up here. I'd highly recommend going watching that video as well, since it clearly explains the difference between cutting with a burr and cutting with one that's been properly removed.
I don't think I can go anymore. My wrists have seen better days.
The difference is staggering between properly sharpening the knife in the first place and using one of these things to maintain a burr. I just wanted to point out that I've already addressed a lot of these issues. I realize that people watch, 30% of the video. They think they have an idea of what is being said, and they end up missing the 30-second segment where I actually explained what their concern was. I get it. We all do it. I do it myself. If you had a problem with my testing, I hope this sort of clears up the issues, and you go back and watch that full video again, as well as the other video that I linked explaining my experience and where I'm coming from and what I'm talking about when I am referring to this thing not working well. Anyway, I hope everybody is having a great new year, and we'll see you in the next video.